Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is the 25th of May, 2005. I'm Alex Jones, your host. And yes, coming up, two different showings of my film Martial Law at the Alamo Drafthouse in downtown Austin. And that's going to be on June 3rd, Friday, June 3rd. Two showings, 7 and 10 p.m. of my new, and I can tell you, my best film I've ever produced, Martial Law, 9/11 Rise of the Police State, and it exposes the secret that holds the world's destiny in its grasp. And I'm very, very, very proud of this film. And I don't have a lot of events. I mainly focus on radio and on documentaries, but we're going to have these three events. Two showings, Friday, June 3rd, Alamo Drafthouse downtown, 7 and 10 p.m. I'll be at both events. And then coming up the next week, Wednesday, June 8th, 8 p.m., Alamo Drafthouse, South Lamar. And a lot of folks are excited about it. I know I'm certainly excited about it. First off, I want to thank the crew for coming in tonight, as they do twice a week, and doing an excellent job. Your calls are going to be coming up this evening. A little bit later, if you're watching on the 25th of May, 477-2288. Of course, for the PrisonPlanet.tv viewers, they're always welcome to call into my syndicated radio broadcast if they have any questions or comments. There's a lot of news I want to cover first, and I want to get straight into it because we've got about 43 minutes left here in this live transmission. Bank security breach may be biggest yet, and this is out of CNN Money. And they get into how the account info at Bank of America was sold by Bank of America to a front company, 670,000 customers, that account information was stolen in what may be the biggest security breach to hit the banking industry. And I have another report here where they admit that the use of Social Security numbers, government and businesses demanding them, has actually proliferated identity theft and identity crime. And the media loves to create a problem. They constantly advertise it. They constantly talk about it. They constantly try to scare the public. And there are millions of cases a year of identity theft. I have had friends who have had their bank accounts completely drained, and then it takes weeks to get their money back. It is a problem. But it's this cashless society that has caused it. And then the media will also try to focus on the internet and go, oh, it's the internet. It's people buying things on the internet. But then I actually went and looked at the numbers themselves, and the predominant loss of credit card numbers and Social Security numbers and identities is taking place via large companies in the federal government buying and selling and trading amongst themselves, literally thousands of different transactions a month of your credit card, your identity, your Social Security information. That's where the lion's share of it is coming from. And that's the major problem. And then after government and private corporations trading and selling this information amongst themselves, the next biggest problem is when you go into a store, brick and mortar type shops, as they're termed. That is actual physical locations, not the internet. And that person behind the counter takes your credit card information, makes a copy, and he doesn't go and charge things on your credit card. He faxes that number or emails that number to his cousin in Pakistan or India or Mexico, but it's mainly Pakistan, India, China, places like that, Saudi Arabia, Israel, and then they go and engage in the fraud from third-party countries. It's a major problem. So if you're worried about identity theft, let's talk about where it's really coming from. The corporations and the government, then brick and mortar shops taking your numbers and then transferring them to someone else, a third party who uses them. And then, ladies and gentlemen, it is the internet. But if you are going to secure servers that are certified by some of the larger companies, VeriSign and others, it is much safer than giving your credit card to somebody at the barbecue place. It's much safer than giving your credit card to somebody at the gas station that's owned by foreigners. And I'm not trying to be mean here. That's just the numbers. That's a big group that's doing it because they have the contacts outside the country. I'm not saying there aren't rednecks at gas stations that steal your credit card number and use it. And then a lot of big companies will double charge credit cards, and a lot of people don't notice it. There's a lot of those scams going on too. But overcharging by water authorities, water companies, and power companies dwarfs the amount of fraud being engaged in at around, $8-9 billion a year in identity theft losses. Water districts charging you more than you owe, power companies charging you more than you owe, that is in the hundreds of billions of dollars per year. Yes, it is ultra massive. But those guys own stock in these media companies, so you rarely hear about it, though it is in major industry publications. So they're fear-mongering over identity theft. And the answer is making you thumb scan, retina scan, or face scan. And these are now going in tanning salons, bars. They're going in businesses to get into companies, to clock in and out. They're going into libraries. Whole shopping chains are doing it. H-E-B wanted to do it in Austin, but the backlash, they backed off. They are doing it in several locations in Houston and up in College Station. But it's happening all over the country, and it is a big, big deal. So their answer is total control. And along with that control, they're going to be taxing you through the new national sales tax that they're going to run alongside the income tax. This is the official plan. But here is CNN, and I have a whole stack of these reports. Bank security breach may be biggest yet. And it says that Bank of America Corporation are among the big banks notifying more than 670,000 customers that account information was stolen in what may be the biggest security breach to hit the banking industry. Account information on the customers was illegally sold by bank employees to a man identified as Orazo Libob, who police say was doing business by illegally posing as a collection agency. When police in Hackensack, New Jersey first announced arrest in the case on April 28th, they estimated that 500,000 people were affected. They've now learned and raised the number to at least 676,000 because some people have more than one account. Hackensack Police Chief Charles Ken Zeiss says the number of accounts breached may top 1 million. As this gets going, the numbers are going to go up and up. Hackensack Detective Captain Frank Loima told CNN earlier Monday, adding that more arrests may be coming in the case. The data theft may have been the biggest ever in banking, the Hackensack, New Jersey Police Department said in a statement, citing an unnamed Treasury Department official. And very, 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 very serious. But every time I look at this stuff, it's almost always not just the numbers, the federal numbers I can go get, but it's just the majority of the articles. It's these companies, and now the feds are paying the states through Homeland Security, almost every major city as well, this is federalizing them, to collect all this personal data on you, and the feds actually buy that from them. And then they sell it to private corporations. Remember that article I made a big deal of last year? Scofflaws get in trouble when they order pizza. Scofflaws are people that laugh at the laws. And that was the weird headline in USA Today. And the article said that most pizza chains are set up with a private corporation in Dallas and the federal government. And the instant you order a pizza, you may have moved, but now you're giving your real address. It goes through a warrant database and a terror watch list database. And instead of getting a pizza delivered, you get a SWAT team. And it said they get 20% of the fines and fees associated. And yes, there's bad data. Innocent people are in there. The point is they're widening these databases. They're widening these conduits. They're trafficking in it back and forth. The government is predominantly causing the problem and then trying to sell the people on an unbelievable solution. Oh, by the way, I don't have a phone box in here tonight. It is screwed up, so Mike will be controlling phone calls in there. I'll go to phone calls in about 15 minutes, so we'll have a good 20 minutes of calls. And Mike, when you're ready, just come in about 15 minutes, and we'll start going to the callers. I'm also, this speaker in here is turned off. We may need to turn that on, so when that time comes up, we'll be able to do that. I decided not to take calls tonight because the system was screwed up, and last minute I said, we'll take some calls, but who knows? Who knows how this will work? But again, this speaker's turned off, so we'll need to turn that back on. But there is just so much here I want to go over. I can't spend all night on this. Big guns when cops use steroids. And it says police brutality, even murder. Now, I've been talking about this for years. You see these cops with the shaved heads, devil tattoos all over them, arms that big around. They have the fat hump on the back of their neck. They have the watery, soft-looking muscle. They're crazed. And a lot of them are on steroids. And a lot of major police agencies are very concerned because they're finding that it's those officers that beat up the old lady, taser the young girl, that rape the woman, that commit murders, that cut a woman's finger off. Just a lot of really incredible stuff that is going on right now. And so there's the headline, Big Guns When Cops Use Steroids. I mean, is there anything scarier? And for those that don't know, men are generally more aggressive than women, and of course can normally carry twice as much weight as women, and because of our testicles, they produce testosterone, several different types, and there are a few other glands in the body that integrate in with that. Women have estrogen. And the police are taking this in mass. I mean, you go to the gym, and a lot of the biggest guys are these gangs of cops. You see them coming in their uniforms, bugging their eyes out. You see them leave, veins all up their necks. I mean, it's crazy, folks. And it's very, very dangerous. Roid rage, you name it. And so I'm glad this is finally being addressed because, it's not just a steroid problem in the NFL or in the national, sports leagues. It is a big problem with law enforcement. And the article gets into when police commit murder. James Bastille IV was a police officer in Riverdale, a suburb of Atlanta. He joined a group of police officers who, in addition to bulking up on steroids, burglarized stores and nightclubs in the Atlanta area. This stuff makes you go psychotic. During one of those burglaries, Bastille shot and killed a nightclub owner. In his defense, Bastille blamed the murder on the steroids he was taking. And it goes into how a large portion of them were on it. Major Greg Barley of the Riverdale Police Department declined to comment on the 12-year-old incident. So it gives all these old incidents where they knew about it a long time ago, and then it gives a national epidemic of abuse, how it's now exploding, how it's now getting very, very serious. I wanted to talk a little bit about Iraq and the wonders of the liberation that our government has brought that country. This is out of the London Telegraph. Black market organ trade is Baghdad's new growth industry. And they get into how people are selling their organs because they're so poor there, something that didn't happen under the Saddam regime. What they don't mention in this article is what's been confirmed in respected foreign publications, that after they beat somebody to death at one of these 32 camps, the one you know of, Abu Ghraib, that they then take their organs as well. And this has been confirmed. Something that a lot of people have trouble coming to grips with is that we're going into our own Pan-American Union. The European Union started 50 years ago as a, quote, trade deal, the European Economic Community. And they merged the police, they merged the trade deals, they merged the laws, they merged the taxation systems, and then now they're taking everyone's freedoms, setting up a draconian police state. And the official plan by the globalists, put out by their think tanks, is to merge the EU with the American Union and then with the Asian Union, and then those three unions, that will be the first world, will be lowered to second world status. That process is ongoing and will be merged with what they call the GAP, or the third world nations. And third world nations that don't go along will be invaded by hook or by crook. And here is Reuters, posted on Infowars.com for posterity, by Larry Fine. Experts call for common North American border. And then we put in related news some of the other recent articles. Panel calls for secured border perimeter with U.S. Canada. Task force urges creation of Fortress America, new PNAC front group, and a tri-national ID card. The United States, Canada, and Mexico should establish a common security perimeter to guard against terrorism in North America, and tri-national independent task force said in a report released on Tuesday. The countries should police their borders together to help border trade, allow easier movement of citizens, and to keep track of potential security threats. Oh, easier movement, we'll keep track of it. Your leg's cut off. Let's cut the other one off. That'll stop the bleeding. The task force said at the New York's Council on Foreign Relations. And then it goes on to say the Council on Foreign Relations formulated the plan for building a North American community. And it's all over the Canadian papers how we don't want to give up our sovereignty. We've got U.S. police and U.S. troops running checkpoints. That's in the major Canadian papers, and we're going to lose our sovereignty. Mexico just loves it because they're totally controlled by the U.S. government. Canada is totally panicking, but their government's all for it. And this is happening, but Rush Limbaugh and all these people tell you it doesn't exist. When Bush first got elected, and Clinton was doing the same thing, they're all just frontmen for the same corporate interest. I remember seeing him when he went to Montreal for that big summit, and they openly were calling for an American Union. And I played clips on my radio show, I played clips here, but again, the national news did not pick up on it. But meanwhile, you listen to NPR, you watch TV, there's ads, there's promos for One World, Global Day, Global Government Day, it's good. Constantly we hear about the UN and the WTO and the WHO and all these groups that make decisions on how to run our country. And it's simple, folks. These are all unelected boards, in most cases private agencies created, given governmental power via treaties, that are removing the authority from our counties, our cities, our states, our federal government. Congress is signing away its authority at a breakneck speed. The same thing happens here in Texas and at the state level. They'll have regional boards that are created. In some cases, no one's even elected on the boards. The legislature will then sign over the authority of the legislature itself to these boards. And then it doesn't matter if cities like Houston don't want toll roads. Even if they don't have a client city council or county commissioner, they just still do it. It's steamrollering the process. It's removing the people from their representatives and making representatives nothing but token figureheads. Speaking of the border, this is from WorldNet Daily. And if you go research on the state and federal health department websites, you will discover that this is not hype. This is real. And this is extremely, extremely serious. I'll show you a close-up of this article here. And then in a few minutes, we'll come turn the speaker on in here, and I'll be able to take some calls. Are illegals making the U.S. a leper colony? This is a real phenomenon. It's a public health threat. New York is endemic now, and nobody's noticed. Well, we have noticed. In 40 years, there have only been 900 leprosy cases in North America. In this article, they say 900 in the U.S. I went and looked the numbers up. 900 from Mexico to Alaska. Mexico didn't have this stuff. But now, Chinese, Pakistanis, Indians are just pouring in. Folks, have you ever been to India? Have you ever seen footage of India? The human defecation all over the streets, dead, rotting cows everywhere, 1,100,000,000 people, people starving to death everywhere, leprosy everywhere, cholera everywhere, diseases everywhere. drug-immune TB. Mike, will you turn the speaker up? It's almost like it's like, turn the speaker up, turn the speaker up. I appreciate that. That's really, I want to thank you for that. So I can take the calls later. Thank you. All right, let me go back to what I was doing. It's hell on earth. Hell on earth. And if you look at the numbers, in fact, I plan to do a whole show on this. I want to get graphs in here and documents and go over all of it. You know, they say, well, that's code for racism to link disease with immigrants. Well, no, it's not. You ever met somebody who's been in the Peace Corps? Ask them. They all get malaria. They all get amoebic dysentery. It screws them up for life. I mean, 30,000 people a day are dying of starvation and diseases that are treatable in the third world. And so they're all coming here. 30 million illegals are here now. Even more want to come. A couple 100 million new births each year worldwide. And our government's setting up a system where they can all come here. I mean, that's the CFR. That's Reuters. The government follows their little orders. So 900 cases in North American modern history in the last 40 years. There were 7,000 cases just in the last year, folks. 7,000 cases. And many of these wet leprosy cases are untreatable. Wet leprosy that can be spread. I mean, folks, do you know what leprosy does? It rots your nose off. It rots your eyes out. Your fingers fall off. It eats the capillaries and then on into the other vital organs of the body. Just starts eating its way deeper and deeper. And I'm not even too worried about leprosy. Did you know we now have amoebic dysentery showing up in this country? Because of open sewers that are flowing in Miami and LA and other areas where stuff breaks, and the people in the neighborhoods where it's broken down were used to open sewers, so it just feces flows down the street. No one fixes it. It's full of amoebic dysentery they brought in from India and Mexico. Those are little amoebas that get in the air. They're spores. Flies carry them. And then many times amoebic dysentery is incurable. The amoebas will pop up every few years, and they can go into your liver and your heart and your brain. Big, fat, vicious amoebas. But you can forget that. That's not even as big a problem as drug-resistant and immune TB. They are setting up the equivalent of modern sanitariums all over the country. I read the cases all the time. North Carolina, Texas, California, New Mexico, Arizona, New York, where half a class in elementary will come down with TB. Large portions of police and social workers are getting TB. Masses of jail guards are getting TB. In the past, we tested people that came into Ellis Island. Everybody else tests. But not anymore, folks. It's just like depleted uranium being used in 3 separate countries, twice in Iraq, 4 times total, 10 locations that we know of in the U.S., proving grounds where they test this stuff. So deadly, the New York Daily News tested the troops, and they had upwards of 2 rims of radiation in them, not to mention the heavy metal effects. Burnt effects have tripled in Gulf War vets since the first Gulf War, and they used 3 times as much. So I guess we'll see a tripling of the tripling this time in Iraq, but this time in major cities in Republican Guard bases where our troops then moved into. And the Army's own manuals say it's deadly, you can't be around it, but they pulled those manuals and won't let the troops read them. Now, what does that have to do with leprosy and drug-resistant TB and all of this? It shows the mindset of those running our government. It is a Malthusian social Darwinist view. They think it's funny. It's a big joke to them. And a lot of them just got the mistress and the multi-million-dollar houses and the jet boats and the helicopters. And even if somebody in their staff gets TB, they just ignore it. Because it's part of a larger plan to bring this country down to second world status. And that's happening. And as if NAFTA and GATT wasn't bad enough, they now are going to have CAFTA and then the Free Trade Area of the Americas that is the Pan-American Union. The Congressional Budget Office admits it will accelerate high-tech job losses 7 times what they've been in the past decade. There is a lot of other news here I want to cover, but I promised to go to your calls. And so we're going to go ahead now and go to those calls. Let's go ahead. I guess the first caller is Matt on line 1. Matt, go ahead.
How you doing, Alex?
Good, sir.
Yeah, I was at the H-E-B a while ago, and I was going through the robotic self-checkout lane, and I had a problem with my ticket, so I went and I talked to the one person that was monitoring the 4 different checkout lanes, and I asked her if she was afraid that if they were gonna put him in all the way down the line and put him out of a job, and she said they tried to do that in San Antonio, and that the people didn't like it, the customers didn't like it. Also, you were talking about raw sewage out in the street and stuff. I lived in Hyde Park a couple of years ago, and our sewage line to our house wasn't hooked up to the main line, and there was raw sewage spilling out in the street in Hyde Park. So.
Well, you do that in an area like L.A. where it stays warm year-round, or you do that in Arizona, which is happening. These illegals move in, stuff breaks, they don't have money to fix it, and, I mean, we've got the footage. And it is literally, listen, I've been over in southeast Austin now, neighborhoods that 5 years ago were nice. I see sides of beef hanging up in doorways, chickens running around, the smell of sewage. And that's just how these people live. They don't think it's bad to have human feces running down the street. And folks, I mean, people better go online and type, in street scenes of India. Or look at online. I mean, it is, folks, we don't want to live like this. We don't want to live. We're a beautiful country with 300 million people. And we don't, I mean, they're going to get rid of all the borders. Right now, the Loriconquistas, funded by the federal government, Matt, are feeling real good about we're going to take over America. Just like they were told that with NAFTA. Now they're all losing their jobs to India. They're going to brush aside the Chicano Nation people that are being funded by New York, admittedly. That's just for now. It's going to be tens of millions more Asians, tens of millions more Arabs, tens of millions more, to where we're a Tower of Babel that can't even communicate with each other. And the Russians, they're bringing in the worst TB. The stuff coming out of Russia, that's the stuff that is immune. I mean, you can go get a $100,000 treatment that makes you totally sick with all these chemicals and stuff, and it still doesn't kill the TB. And it eats your lungs. And this is all over the health department websites. It's an epidemic, but it's never in the news. I mean, it's exploding. Hundreds of thousands of new cases every year. It just, schools are on fire with it. Whooping cough. Never heard of that anymore. It's all over the place. Really mean forms of it. Folks, if we let all these third worlders in, it'll lower the standard of living to that level. First world nations always understood that. They were first world, the other countries were third world. But the globalists don't want to raise the third world. They want to lower everything down to a giant slave serf class serving a tiny elite. They officially talk about it. Let's go to, is it Phil on line 2? Go ahead, Phil.
Hey, what's up, Alex?
How you doing?
Basically, I looked at my bank card and I just got it issued. It's got the pyramid eye on it from Velocity, their new little deal. I walked in there and there was like this cop on duty, and I don't know if it's illegal, but when you're at the cashier making a deposit or withdrawal, this cop, he just walks straight around and sits right next to the teller, like he can see all my personal information, and he's like intimidating me. I never looked at him, but it was just like, I've been listening to you for the last 15 years, and it's like everywhere I go, I see through your eyes. I'm in agreement with you, and it's like, you leave the bank and you're like, man, I just want to drop my account. How can we get out of the system that we're drowning in right now. And also, if you could touch on the cameras at every corner in Austin, those are federally funded, aren't they? And what are they plugged into? You know, it seems like if I want to go to the store and get a pack of cigarettes, they can follow me from, you know, North Austin to South Austin the whole way. They can just watch me go.
No, it's great points. Thanks for the call. And your comment dovetails with what the last caller was saying. About 8 years ago, I read the industry publications online. I read the industry really syllabus, you know, their game plan. And they go, we just met in Chicago to phase out all checkers. We're first going to put in a few self-serves and then cut back on the number of employees. People will be forced to use it. They don't like it, but they will finally submit. I mean, they use comments like submit. And then you try to go to Home Depot after 10 at night. There's nobody there to check you out. It's all self-checkout lanes. And they try that everywhere. And it doesn't. You think it saves you money. No, it doesn't. It drives down the service level. You get whatever service you demand. You know, it's like 30, 40 years ago, they put in a self-serve gas pump. Hey, it's cheaper. Then pretty soon they just took all the service out. It's like McDonald's. Thank you. Please throw your trash away. You feel like a good person and do it. You've just taken somebody's job. Till one day it'll be a robot spitting your food out at you. And that also brings centralization and control for the government and the corporate interests that control it. Know your customer. They tried to get know your customer where there'd be no Fourth or Fifth Amendment. Everything you do at a bank account will be instantly integrated with a federal database. Now they've done it. Every prescription you get, again, for a diaphragm or 800 milligram ibuprofen when you sprain your ankle. Everything, not just, you know, the Schedule III drugs. It's all instantly uploaded into federal databases. Not even a pretense of there being due process or Fourth Amendment for privacy. And there's not even a pretense that it's for terrorism. Everybody's calling my show now. I went into the bank to open a savings account, $500 for my 8-year-old, and they said under Patriot Act I must give up all my information and give my net worth, and they've got to run me through Homeland Security. But the Border Patrol's been ordered to stand down by Bush. That's not public. Just like he ordered NORAD to stand down on 9/11. We are wide open. It's a joke. It's a sick fraud. And there was a guy in Indianapolis, Indiana, about a month ago who walked into a bank. He had a bank account there. He was complaining. He said, I'm going to wait till a manager gets here. He sat down, had a backpack. They called police. They walked in. The man said, what? I'm here waiting. They admit in the article he didn't cuss or anything. He said, I'm waiting until your manager talks to me. And he sat down. Hour later, cops came in. He's sitting there. They brought him outside, had a bomb-sniffing dog go over. They had a robot go and spray water on it. This was all in the newspaper. And they said, well, we didn't find any bomb, but we're going to go ahead and charge him with terrorism because we felt like it was terroristic. Folks, I'm not kidding. That article's on my website. Like it's normal. Indianapolis Star-Tribune. They decide it's, you're selling a knockoff of the Rubik's Cube. It's totally legal. Under Homeland Security, you're a terrorist if you don't stop selling it. And the lady at Puffer Belly Toys is like, what? Oh, you're a pot dealer. We're going to charge you as a terrorist and not have you due process because marijuana aids Al-Qaeda. You know, everything's Al-Qaeda. Everything's Al-Qaeda. Unless you're Bush, who's in business with Al-Qaeda, in business with Carlyle Group, flying the Bin Ladens out. Then, you're good. You're good. If you're Rumsfeld giving nuclear reactors in North Korea, you're fighting terrorists. If you're Rumsfeld giving botulism and anthrax to Saddam, then you're fighting terrorism. It's a joke, people. They get power out of the terror. They scare you into submission and destroy the republic and set up an empire. Let's go ahead and talk to Joe on line 3. Joe, go ahead.
Hey, Alex, what's up?
How you doing?
Hey, man, I'm a pretty big fan of yours. I've only been listening to you about a year, so there's probably a lot of stuff I haven't heard that's probably get re-hammered out again and everything. But I was just curious what you felt about Freemasonry. I know your views on the Illuminati and the New World Order and that. But I was just kind of curious as to what you thought about it.
Well, I'll tell you, this film covers my views of the Illuminati. See that pentagram under the police?
I see it.
Well, this is my newest and most powerful film ever, and it covers my views on them. And let me let you go and find the article, because I intend to cover this. And I left my office today to come battle traffic to get down here, and I wanted to Google off my website all the big Canadian newspapers and TV shows where they discovered that their government buildings were built by a secret group of elite Masons, and that they're all built to 666 parameters, and that they found embedded in walls and behind things secret ritual altars that can be rolled out, and that they have rituals there when nobody's basically looking. And I interviewed the professor that exposed all this. So now there's kind of a coming out about all of this. They're now admitting it. But here is the Associated Press. And again, there's the Associated Press posted on the Indianapolis Star-Tribune. Funny, I was just talking about this paper. And for posterity, we then posted it in the Infowars.com format. I like to explain this because a lot of people are just now getting into internet news, and they see a lot of articles on my site that we save in our format so that it's there forever, or for years, instead of being taken off in just a few days like some of these guys do. People get confused and go, oh, that's not real. Well, on any of the articles I do, you can just link through. That's a link right there where it says Associated Press to the same article, this one right here. And I know I explain that from time to time, but I still get emails by confused people. Exhibit reveals Masons' influence. The Capitol and Washington Monument among noted buildings marked by group. Now, 10 years ago, I'd talk about how there's a giant pentagram for D.C. I mean, the French architect that designed it admitted all this. It's taught in architecture school. It's not like it's a secret. But it is a secret for the unwashed masses that don't even know what the Fifth Amendment is. So Rush Limbaugh says this stuff doesn't exist. Well, it doesn't exist then. Or Peter Jennings says it doesn't exist, so it doesn't exist. I guess now, Brian Williams. Exhibit reveals Mason's influence. And it gets into what the obelisk means and what the Capitol means. But if you look at the street map, it's a big owl sitting in a pyramid with a pentagram around it. And when I explain to you that the Frost Bank building is Moloch, they're building these temples all over the U.S. A lot of these new buildings have the owl ears and the big eyes, and they find excuses to do it. But their religion manifests itself through architecture, because I was explaining this to Sammy and Bob last week. I was on their show, and they're going, Mason, you think they're bad? And I said, now, Sammy, Bob, I said, listen, the founders of Texas were predominantly Masons, the Spanish and Anglos that founded it. The writer of the Constitution was Hispanic, and he was a Mason. A lot of the founding fathers were Masons, but they're porch Masons. And by porch Masons, they think there's only 33 degrees, when there's actually 360 degrees. And George Washington wrote about dangerous Masonic groups out of Germany that we expose in this film. Dangerous Masonic groups out of Germany that were taking over the Masonic order. Now, anything secret is rife with corruption. They didn't have intelligence agencies 500 years ago under the name intelligence agency. The first country to come up with the name intelligence agency were the French about 300 years ago, and the word espionage or economic warfare. The British and the Dutch perfected it. And if you read the history of the CIA, it'll tell you Ivy League young elite men founded the CIA out of the OSS from the Skull and Bones organization. Secret societies were what you would call intelligence agencies of old. And the first intelligence agencies were set up 3,400 years ago in Egypt. and then in Babylon with Nebuchadnezzar later, and then in Greece and Rome, in secret mathematical schools of architecture and engineering. Mathematics and the way to build was more valuable than diamonds and rubies and gold and armies. The number 2 man in every empire was the chief builder. So they had secret mystery schools where they only taught it to select people, but they believed it was magical, so mysticism was passed on. Incredible power was built up in these groups. They're occultic by their very nature that they predate Christianity. And so this says maybe it goes back to Solomon's temple, but we know it goes back to 700 years ago to the men that built the cathedrals. Boulder Dash. Solomon just knew this stuff because the Jews took it out of Egypt. All right? And this is a major control mechanism, and they've just gotten more and more corrupt, more and more out of control, and they've got these good old boys who give each other jobs and business and kind of a secret brotherhood of back scratching in your small towns, and some are good, some are bad, but generally bad because nepotism and back scratching. And I mean, look, my great uncle worked for the mafia, the German and Irish mob in Texas for Al Capone. Some of the biggest families in Austin made their money off liquor. And I'm not even saying they're bad, but back during Prohibition. But my Uncle Houston, my Uncle Houston ran a bunch of speakeasies and other and sundry places. And some guys tried to rob him, and he pulled out his revolver and killed 2 of them. And he went into the judge and flashed his Masonic sign. Case dismissed. Wham. Get out of jail free card. Commit murder. Now, supposedly the Masons say if he'd have flashed that sign, they did their own investigation. And if he really wouldn't have been in the right, they would have come and slit his throat. But they don't enforce that. Now, I mean, this is a story my Uncle Houston told my dad. And I barely remember him. He died when I was like 5. Boy, what a character. But, I mean, he was the real deal, folks. Ran away from home when he was 10, sailed the world on ships, steamships, everything, came back, ran a bunch of stuff in Houston. But the point is, people come over him, try to shake him down. He just kills them. End of story. Blows them away, goes in, flashes the Masonic sign. Well, you think about, then they set up the CIA, all this secrecy, all this control. And then it just breeds drug dealing and corruption. And then these guys are into the occult. They're into white magic and black magic. And the black magic groups, and it's all just as bad, have taken over the Masons. And so we've got, basically, to use the Star Wars analogy, the Sith are in control. And that's what Lucas based all that on. He admits it. We're out of time. I'll be showing my new film twice at the Alamo Drafthouse, Friday, June 3rd downtown, and once Wednesday, June 8th, 8 p.m., Alamo Drafthouse, South Lamar. And it'll be a very interesting details at Infowars.com. Great show tonight. I want to thank the wonderful crew. I think I like this system with Mike running the calls out of the other room, and maybe we'll keep doing that. And I'll see you back next week and on the radio in 10 seconds, rebroadcast of today's daytime show at Infowars.com. Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. Hey, stand up for liberty and freedom. We're losing our freedoms. We got to defend them. Take care.